For the past year, Black Lives Matter has been everywhere. On Facebook, Twitter, and in the news, it's been hard to ignore how racism has dominated the headlines. More people are realizing that when it comes to economic status and race, parts of America are as segregated today as they were 50 years ago. And nowhere is that segregation more obvious than in public schools. When the Supreme Court ruled on segregated schools in 1954, it said that separate facilities are unequal, and that equality in education was fundamental for any child's success. Integrated schools mean better opportunities for more kids. Studies show that low-income kids in low-income schools do badly, but low-income kids attending middle-income schools tend to do a lot better. To end segregation, school districts across the country had to bus kids to different schools to make sure they were as diverse as possible. And it worked. School integration reached its highest point in 1988, but now US schools are almost as segregated as they were in the 60s. So what happened? Wealthier parents are able to move their kids to better schools. And because poverty is often drawn along racial lines in America, better schools tend to mean whiter schools. Underfunded schools that perform badly tend to be mainly Black and Latino. Over the years, the courts have relaxed integration orders in districts across the country. This has allowed these districts to attempt to keep wealthy families from moving away by ending the busing programs, or by redistricting to carve out schools for wealthier kids. The result is more white kids attending schools with fewer Black and Latino students, and more Black and Latino students are going to schools with few or no white kids at all. In fact, the number of what some call apartheid schools, schools that are less than 1% white, has almost tripled since 1988. So why are school districts so keen to keep white kids at the cost of segregating their schools again? Well, money is a big factor. When wealthier families move away, they take their tax revenue with them. That means less tax revenue to build schools and neighborhoods. And this isn't just an issue in the South, it's across the country. The state with the most segregated schools? New York. This race and class segregation has left us with a two-tier education system, where it's almost impossible for schools in poor areas to keep up.
I feel like it's so much segregation in America's schools. It's a simple answer because it's so much segregation still in America.
Stephen Brown went to school in Florissant, Missouri, a few miles from Ferguson, where the Black Lives Matter movement grew to national prominence.
Instead of a teacher actually standing up at the board and explaining it themselves, I feel like they let the paperwork do all the work.
That's not an isolated case. As the Black population of a school rises, teachers are likely to be less experienced or qualified, and more likely to rely on less engaging teaching methods, like pre-made packets. In fact, by the time they enter the 8th grade, Black students are already 3 years behind their white peers in math and reading. And the majority of so-called dropout factory high schools are schools with mainly Black and Latino populations.
Most of the kids didn't go off to college. Some of them end up getting 9 to 5. Most of them I heard about either they locked up or they dead.
On the other side, predominantly white schools tend to isolate their students from other racial groups, which also can have a long-term effect when these kids grow up to become cops, politicians, or even teachers.